All right, y'all, welcome to the show. I have an amazing one for you today. So, huge news dropped yesterday. Donald Trump found guilty of fraud in a civil case in New York. I'm going to get to all the details on that. Really some astonishing stuff. We also have Biden joins the UAW picket line. At the same time, Trump is about to speak to non-union scabs. Really stark contrast and difference there to dive into. We'll do exactly that. Then we also have for you, the Republicans released a proposed spending plan to avert the government shutdown, and it is the most barbaric, savage, moronic thing I've ever seen, and I'm going to give you all of the details, and you will be astonished at how callous these losers are, and also kind of astonished that Democrats are not pounding away at this absolutely absurd document, which basically exposes them as total sadists. I mean, that's the best term to use here. Then, look, there's a lot of talk about Biden's cognitive decline. I think that's a fair conversation, but there's not a lot of talk about Trump's cognitive decline, and we have some new videos for you, and let's just say they're really bad. And then the Republicans, there's a couple Republican senators now who have come out swinging in favor of the ultra-corrupt Democratic Senator, Bob Menendez. It really is an astonishing story. We now have, I think it's over 14 Democratic senators who've come out and said, Bob Menendez has to go. And credit to those people, right? It took them long enough, but hey, they got to the right place. Republican senators are the one defending a corrupt Democrat. It's like, what is going on? I'll explain to you exactly what's going on because the dynamic is kind of interesting. All right, so without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into it here. So guys, this is a big deal. Judge rules Donald Trump defrauded banks, insurance companies in New York Attorney General's civil suit. So I'm going to give you all the specifics on this, but just understand up front, what we're looking at here is up to a $250 million fine for the Trump organization, and also Trump can lose his business certificates in the state of New York, which would be a devastating blow. It means they can't do business in the state of New York anymore. And also what would happen is there would be some independent judge who's appointed to basically liquidate the assets of his businesses in New York. I mean, this is like, I can't overstate this. This is the biggest blow yet to Trump in his entire time as a public person and post-presidency. Really astonishing stuff. So, here's what they say. New York Attorney General Letitia James scored a major win in her civil suit against former President Donald Trump and some of his adult children on Tuesday, as a judge ruled the GOP frontrunner had indeed been committing fraud for years. Judge Arthur Engoron found the former president and his company deceived banks, insurers, and others by massively overvaluing his assets and exaggerating his net worth on paperwork used in making deals and securing financing. Engoron's summary judgment found Trump liable for the key claim in James' lawsuit alleging Trump committed fraud by inflating his assets by billions of dollars since 2011. The AP added that Engoron ruled Trump, his company, and key executives repeatedly lied about the value assets on his annual financial statements, reaping rewards such as favorable loan terms and lower insurance premiums. Engoron also canceled the certificates of various Trump businesses, appointed a former judge as an independent monitor of the Trump organization, and will appoint receivers to manage the canceled LLCs. Noted former federal prosecutor Renato Mariotti, who added, this is a pretty big deal. So, look, another way to conceptualize this, another way to talk about it, is Trump just got the corporate death penalty in the state of New York. They say Trump inflated his net worth by as much as $2.23 billion, and by one measure, as much as $3.6 billion on annual financial statements given to banks and insurers. He claims that if the values of the property have gone up in the years since the financial statements were submitted, then the numbers were not inflated at that time, Engoron wrote, adding, he also seemed to imply that the numbers cannot be inflated because he could find a buyer from Saudi Arabia to pay any price he suggests. Now, they were trying to use that argument as a get-out-of-jail-free card. But guys, that argument is if anything, is further fuel against him, because one of the main claims against the Trump family is that they are massively corrupt, especially to Saudi Arabia. Look at Jared Kushner getting $2 billion from Saudi Arabia. Well, what did Saudi Arabia get in return for that? And we know what they got in return for that. There was reporting that Jared Kushner was sharing classified information with Saudi Arabia. When they butchered Jamal Khashoggi and chopped him up into little pieces, they didn't even get a slap on the wrist. Trump continued to send them billions of dollars in weapons. So there's already this argument of like, hey, you guys are in bed with the Saudis, and we know that they're paying off Trump as well, tens of millions or hundreds of millions of dollars through his golf courses for these live golf events. And now he's saying like, well, it's okay that I committed fraud because the Saudis would have bailed me out anyway. Well, what does that say about your relationship with the Saudis? Oh my God. James is suing the Trump Organization for $250 million in penalties and to ban Trump and his adult children from doing business in New York. Ivanka Trump was dismissed from the case in June. The suit is now set to go to a non-jury trial starting October 2nd, in which Engoron will decide on the remaining allegations in James' suit and on the penalty Trump and his company may pay. All right, so let me explain this a little more for you. What basically happened here is Trump would undervalue his properties for the sake of taxes. So he would always want to pay low taxes. So he would report that these properties are worth much less than they're actually worth so he can get a lower tax bill. Then at the same time, he would turn around and overvalue the properties when he's trying to sell them or promote them or calculate his net worth. But most importantly, he would overvalue them to get loans from banks on more favorable terms and get better insurance deals and get a better interest rate. So there's a term that we use for that. When you undervalue in one instance to pay low taxes, overvalue in other instances to get a better deal from the banks and the insurance companies, that's called fraud. And you know what? We know that in this country, the banks and the insurance companies are very powerful. These are some of the people who actually run the government. And the fact that Trump was basically duping these people and robbing these people is coming back to bite him in the ass. So the other things we learned, he falsified business records, he issued false financial statements. Basically, he's caught here on insurance fraud and bank fraud. So if you look at the specifics of the claim against Trump from the New York Attorney General, first of all, there's 280 pages of detailed evidence. And this is something I talked about at the time. We covered it at the time. Anybody who's claiming this is a witch hunt is either totally ignorant to the facts, so like they didn't read the claims against Trump, or they're idiots, or they're full-on cult brain, or they're lying. Like, those are the only options. I haven't seen anybody on the right honestly engage with the evidence and the details in the claim against Trump here. So 280 pages from the New York Attorney General. There's 200 plus false and misleading asset valuations. So to give a couple examples of this, there's a Wall Street property that he has, which is worth $200 million. Now, okay, it's a big number, right? Like that's a lot. But he listed it as worth over $500 million. Trump also claimed that his famous New York apartment, he said it was 30,000 square feet. Well, it turns out it was actually 11,000 square feet. He also claims that property is worth $327 million, and that's a price that's higher than any apartment has ever sold for in New York City history. He overstated the price by about $200 million. So guys, this is like, as far as crimes go, this is also just sloppy, right? Like, he's just a total narcissist and fabulist, and he thinks he can get away with this stuff, but when it comes to the law, you're going to struggle to get away with this stuff, and he's getting caught speeding here. And I always told you guys from the very beginning, the claims that I thought were most legitimate against Trump. I remember during the time of Russiagate, I was saying, I don't know, this doesn't sound legit, this sounds kind of fake, and I was right about that. But I also told you, the claims against his businesses are absolutely correct. I mean, this guy was in real estate in New York City in the 1980s. If you were in real estate in New York City in the 1980s, you absolutely have mafia ties. And in fact, one of Trump's old lawyers was the top lawyer for the mafia. And so stuff like this is par for the course. It absolutely is. So again, he did this stuff to increase his net worth and then get banks to give him more favorable terms. Another great example of this is Mar-a-Lago. So Mar-a-Lago gets revenue of about $25 million a year, and it's valued at a maximum of $75 million a year. And in legal statements, they said it was worth $739 million. Now, again, maximum value is $75 million, and they said it's worth $739 million. Another example, he got a loan of $170 million from Deutsche Bank and sold the post office he had in D.C. for over $300 million. Now, he got that huge loan based on false pretenses, and when he made the sale of the D.C. post office, he made a profit of $100 million. Again, classic textbook fraud. Now, what's the right's reaction to it? Well, I saw like Mark Levin was basically calling this Stalinist charges. Of course, not engaging with any of the facts, any of the details, any of the specifics. Just, I don't know, they're communists if they're coming after Trump. Literally dumbest, lowest level thing I could ever think of. Just, single-digit IQ stuff, right? But now, like Eric Trump and Ted Cruz and some of these morons are on Twitter, and they're railing against a part of what the judge said, which claimed Mar-a-Lago is worth $18 million. And they're like, well, this is absurd. It's obviously not worth $18 million. By the way, Trump claimed in a deposition it's worth $1.5 billion. I just told you, maximum it's worth is $75 million. He claims $1.5 billion, and he did it in a deposition. There's another part where they're talking about the NFTs that sold for $99, and Trump claimed it sold for about $82,000. Like, are you the dumbest person on the planet, or are you such a fabulous that you can't reel it in when you're doing a literal legal deposition? It's astonishing. But anyway, the claim that the right is seizing on is, well, this judge says Mar-a-Lago is worth $18 million, and that's totally bogus. And so obviously this whole thing is a witch hunt. Obviously this whole thing is fake, because everybody knows Mar-a-Lago is worth more than $18 million. What they're not telling you is $18 million is the amount that the Trump family said it was worth so that they could pay lower taxes. And then now, after the fact, when they're trying to pump up their net worth or, promote themselves as great business people or, talking about maybe selling it, then all of a sudden, oh, it's worth $1.5 billion or it's worth $1 billion, Eric Trump said, speculated to be worth $1 billion. Or, like I said, in the legal statements, they said $739 million. So the $18 million, if you're going after the judge for bringing up that $18 million number, redirect that back at the Trump family, because that's what they claim the asset valuation was so they could pay low taxes on it. God damn it. It's like, I am honestly astonished at the extent to which they have no argument at all. I mean, it's embarrassing. It's pathetic. All it takes is like 5 minutes of reading through the actual claims to debunk any of the nonsense that they throw out there. So look, he's in trouble. So what's gonna happen is he loses his business licenses in New York. His business certificate gone in New York. Then the other question is, how long until other creditors get freaked out by this and abandon him? That's huge. That's like you're witnessing the crumbling of the Trump business empire right in front of our eyes. That's huge. Then the other question is are they going to throw the book at him and say, you have to pay a $250 million fine, of which I'm sure he cannot afford, right? That's the other part of this. So this is the biggest deal yet in terms of, Trump being in trouble. And remember, this was one of the cases that nobody was even talking about anymore because we got the Jack Smith cases in D.C. and the Fani Willis cases in Georgia, the January 6th related stuff, the classified documents, the obstruction of justice. Nobody was even talking about this one anymore. And this is the biggest blow to Trump yet. So then the final question is, will this impact him in the Republican primary? Answer, not at all. It's amazing. This is how you know. It's a cult at this point. If this exact set of facts came out against Joe Biden, the Democratic Party would shove him aside and immediately prop up somebody else and be like, we can't do it. This guy's guilty of fraud. Of course we're not going to go with him. But with Trump, either nothing will change or he'll go up 2 or 3 more points in the Republican primary. Now, but I will end on some good news here, which is this hurts him, man. This absolutely hurts him. He's panicking behind the scenes. And he released a ridiculous statement, witch hunt, deranged, yada, yada. His standard stuff that it just seemed more panicked than usual because he should be panicking because this is an actual strike against him. But does this hurt a guy like Donald Trump in the general election? Yes, it will. There was the poll that came out. It was an outlier, to be fair, but Trump was up by 10 points on Biden going into 2024. The real average is Trump is +2. Will this hurt him in a general? Yes. Biden's got the big strike of being like old and can barely stand and is basically a living dusty carcass. But when push comes to shove, I do think if you get Americans in a voting booth, hey, you want the guy who's guilty of committing fraud and has 91 criminal charges, or you want the old geezer who wants to sleep 12 hours a day? I think they're going to go with the old geezer ultimately. But that part is just speculation. We'll see what happens. But look, devastating news here for Trump. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.